Perfect. Welcome everybody to a leadership development webinar. Today's topic is going to be treasurer topics and financial planning. These webinars are every first Wednesday of the month, and we are trying to cover a huge array of important and valuable topics that our leaders across the state have asked us to tackle. We're very excited to handle treasurer topics today and financial planning, a big area of PTA work, and to have our distinguished speakers with us. But to begin with, I'm going to introduce my fellow member of the leadership development team. Rob Rihos is our leadership development coordinator. He will introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. So today I do have the honor of introducing Patty Frazier. She's currently serving as the New York State PTA Treasurer. Prior to that, she was New York State PTA Outreach Coordinator and Western Region Director. She's been an active member for over 25 years, beginning at the Maple West Elementary School, where she had her 3 children attended. She has held positions at the unit, council levels before accepting the role as Region Board Director. And then she is also a longtime volunteer of the Girl Scouts of West New York. I also have the honor to introduce Dania Welch, who is our amazingly dedicated insurance and membership manager. She has devoted 10 years tenure to our members, supporting membership, insurance, finance, bylaws, and our favorite topic, IRS, IRS matters. So again, thank you, Dana and Patty, for being with us today and presenting.
Thank you, Rob. Again, I want to thank Dana for joining me tonight as part of the presentation, and for Amani and Rob for their wonderful hosting of our webinar tonight. So we're going to move right forward to our treasurer topics and financial planning.
Patty, you're on mute.
Yes, thank you. So I start every one of my workshops and webinars with our New York State PTA mission. Especially for our PTA leaders, it's most important that we keep the mission in the forefront. The New York State PTA mission, PTA is a powerful voice for all children, a relevant resource for families and communities, and a strong advocate for the education and well-being of every child. This is what we're working for, and this is really the, as we call it, our mission, what should be driving all of the work that we do. In addition, PTA purposes kind of bring the mission to life for us and gives us directions that we can go to work with our communities, our members, and our schools to ensure that we can bring our mission to fruition. So the purposes I have listed here, and you can also find them on the New York State PTA website as well as in your bylaws. And speaking of bylaws, the bylaws are your framework for everything that we do as a PTA. They are required not only because we are a PTA, but because we are a 501c3 organization. And so bylaws, again, are a great way for an executive committee to get together and read through the bylaws so everyone can understand, because it's, as we say, this puts everybody on the same page, or as we would say with bylaws, on the same pages, because they're about 13 pages long. But they're a fast read, and they're, the information there is very important and really can help make sure that you accomplish during the whole school year and PTA fiscal year everything that you need to do to stay a PTA in good standing, which is most important for us. And just like we have our mission and our purposes, we have our bylaws and then procedures, which sort of bring the bylaws to life. They, you know, kind of add the content that we need to what's put out in the bylaws so that you can have an effective and efficiently run organization. So for all of our units, procedures should be both general and specific. So general and job specific or general and committee specific, But you have to start somewhere. So start with some general procedures just so that everybody who is working with your association beyond your executive committee, including your board, knows what's expected of them and what their responsibilities are throughout the year. So basically what procedures will do will detail what you should be doing on a monthly basis so that the work can be done. But they are not like bylaws where they're less subject to change. So procedures can go from year to year or just from meeting to meeting. So each person should be keeping an eye on the procedures that affect them. And if they feel that there are changes needed, that they should be suggesting them. They're, again, meant to complement your bylaws and to add more information so that the work can be done. But those two documents together, your bylaws and procedures, really give you the authority and your chair people the authority to administer the affairs of the PTA, as I said. The procedures should be adopted by the executive board because for the most part, they are going to tell the executive board members, who mainly are your chair people, the work that they need to do related to their position. If you need to make changes to procedures, if you could let your board know prior to that board meeting, just a majority vote is all that is needed to make those changes. If for some reason, a procedure change comes up right at the meeting or you aren't able to give the prior notice, when you do take the vote to make the change, it should be a 2/3 majority vote to make that change. And I highly recommend a trip to the New York State PTA Resource Guide, Section 7, Bylaws and Procedures, for more content and ideas on how to write your own procedures. So now we're going to get into some treasurer talk. As we all know, the treasurer is one position on the executive committee, and I firmly believe that all treasurers should be working in conjunction with their executive committee and not operating and feeling that they're operating by themselves. It is a position that requires, if you're not a treasurer on the call, it is a position that requires a lot of working with people at all levels, administrators, members, chair people. A lot of people are constantly coming to the treasurer to ask for things, and the treasurer is a lot of times having to say no, and that's not always fun. So I encourage all of you that are non-treasurers on the call to, really reach out and support your treasurer and make sure that we're all working together as a team and not one person is having to make all the decisions and always having to be the one to say no. So your PTA executive committee is your elected officers, and then expanding from there, your board, which is detailed in your bylaws who sits on your board, but for the most part, it is your standing committee chairs, and then you have the option of adding people like your principal or teacher liaisons and your special committee chairs. But together, all of you are responsible for the safekeeping of all of the PTA funds. We are responsible for those funds to our members, and really beyond that, to the people that choose to donate to our PTA, either through a fundraiser or in other methods. So again, we need to be responsible for the PTA funds, and it is the role of the treasurer to make sure that everybody knows where the money is at all times. The procedure should be in place for just that purpose of handling the PTA funds, whether it's collection of money at an event or writing checks to pay for expenses, either for a fundraiser or for an activity that was held. For that, the main minimum part of those procedures should be at least one form, again, a cash tally form that shows where, an accounting of the income if you are for your chair people or other people that are handling money at the membership table at open house, so that when they turn the funds over, that the money has been counted by two people and recorded. And the same with your expenses. There should be a form for that to request money for anything. If you need a check to be written to pay an invoice, or if you need funds for a reimbursement for somebody who has expended personal funds for PTA work, all of those things should be recorded and requested by way of that expense voucher form. Another aspect of PTA, the more modern world that we live in, is we do know that it is internet shopping can be certainly cost effective for the PTA, or being out in the community and not asking a PTA member to put out their own funds. there is the opportunity for a limited use and a low limit credit card if that is something that your unit chooses to do. We really request that if you do that, that you must have procedures in place to monitor the use of that credit card, to detail how that credit card will be used. We definitely feel that a credit card is preferred over a debit card because, again, a debit card is directly connected to the bank account, and it doesn't have the limits like a credit card would have and the restrictions. We do have in the resource guide, again, under the section 5 for finance, a little bit of an assessment tool about whether or not your unit is ready for a credit card. So we highly recommend that you read that through too as well, if that's something that you're going to be using in your unit. Also, kind of trying to keep up with the modern times, we do want to make sure that everyone understands that no PTA bank account, whether your savings or checking account, whichever one you have and use, should ever be connected to a peer-to-peer platform or app. The most popular, of course, being Venmo right now, but also examples like Zelle and Cash App. Because these are considered peer-to-peer platform, right away, the name itself says this is not for PTA. Peer-to-peer, person-to-person, really eliminates PTA from being a part of using these applications. None of these app platforms, peer-to-peer platforms, have bank level security, and because of that, we cannot guarantee that we can protect our PTA funds. So these applications, as they stand now, even Venmo for Business, is not something that a PTA can or should be using. Again, the final step in the modern world is, and I think I just saw this on a Facebook page for PTA national leaders, was again somebody coming forward to say that their unit had been contacted with a very an email that was written to the president or appeared to be written from the president to the treasurer to ask them to take some financial action. I can personally say, as New York State PTA treasurer, I get at least 3 to 10 of those a month from our supposed PTA president asking me to report our bank account statements, our balance, to write checks, to send a payment to a vendor. All of these things, my first step, of course, is, in reading it, this doesn't even sound like something our president would do. She knows that, our procedures. And then, of course, if you, research that email and click to see, the actual address that it came from, you'll see that it wasn't from the president. That being said, we know that these emails are out there and some of them can be quite convincing. And certainly we have had reports of units where our volunteers have, received these emails and thinking that they were actually from the president and have taken the action and resulted in a loss of funds. And a lot of times it's the loss of personal funds. So again, it's an email that comes in, the president says, I need you to do this for me right now. And the treasurer or the vice president, whoever receives it, recognizes we're all busy and says, okay, great, I can do that. I can take care of getting those. And a lot of times it's purchase gift cards. I can go get those and then you'll reimburse me. But as it turns out, it is a scam. So as a way of, again, beefing up your procedures, you might want to consider just to put a little bit of procedure in there right now about what you would do as a unit if one of your PTA volunteers was the victim of a scam doing something that they felt was PTA business. And the reason for that is you want to be able to let them know if it's a small amount, obviously it's not going to be something that we can go back to insurance and place a claim. Our insurance deductible on those types of claims is $250. So if it's under $250, obviously you aren't able to do the insurance. But if you as a PTA unit can set up a right away and say, we will certainly reimburse that person 100%, 50%, whatever you feel that your unit wants to approve as a procedure. And this, the fact of the matter of having that procedure puts another sense of awareness for people to say, to be on the lookout for these types of things. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to prevent them. We can continually report them as phishing scams, but as soon as we report one, another one comes across. So if you have any questions about that particular thing, I do, feel like you can reach out to your region director or your region treasurer or myself for help with the wording on that. Usually early on in the year, we have a more extensive workshop on budget and setting up your budget. And since we're into the school year already, into November, I'm not going to go into a big detail about budget. But I think what I want to talk about now is time for the treasurer to work with the executive committee to review the budget, where you stand now. Most of us have already had our first major fundraiser that will give us an idea of how our year is going to go. So let's take a moment to sit down and review with the executive committee where you stand, where you think you're going to be going in the future. Do you have enough funds to carry out the work you want to do? Do you have more funds than you need? And should you be considering to make some adjustments to the budget? So please, take advantage of this time as we maybe move into a slower time where units aren't having full association meetings to take on this review. And then if you feel that the amendment needs to be proposed, then you can go ahead and you be prepared to do that either at your January meeting with a full assessment. So again, with a budget amendment similar to procedures, you'll do this at a regular meeting where your members are present, establish a quorum. If you can give notice ahead of time, again, that the budget is going to be amended and you can give as much detail as you want. Again, it's a majority vote that will decide whether the amendment will go through. If you are not able to give the prior notice, we'll go back to needing the 2/3 vote in order to pass an amendment. Now, in the review of the budget, another thing that you can look at is if you weren't able to include this on your initial budget, and especially this year, I know a lot of our units are coming out of COVID with less funds than they normally might have. But on the flip side, we're hearing units that have already done their major fundraiser and they are raising more money than they have done in the past. So, there's both sides to the coin there, but little treasurer joke there. Let's take a look at our unit budget and make sure that we have expense line items for training for our officers and chairs and our volunteers that we want to bring up through our chain of leadership development. If we haven't had a chance to put those expense lines there, let's see if we can amend the budget to get some training in for our people. Obviously, our trainings that we do now, like this one that we are recording, will be posted on the New York State PTA website, and you'll be able to access it at no charge. But I know most of our regions offer training, and we certainly at the state level offer some training that does involve a cost. So let's take a look at that and add those expense line items. And the same thing with attendance at our region and state events. And just a little shameless plug as an example, we are in the process of doing all the final arrangements for our New York State Convention, which will be happening the weekend of November 19th. It will be our 125th annual meeting and convention. It is both a live and virtual event. And so the virtual option for registration is open still and at a cost of $75 per person, very reasonable for a person to participate in all of the business of the weekend, including our business meetings where we're going to be voting on bylaws and our resolutions, which will set our advocacy positions, as well as electing our new officers at the state level. And then it will be there'll be training laced in throughout the weekend. So I really encourage you, if you don't already have that expense line item for attendance at region and state events, let's take a quick look and see if you can find the funds and then the delegates that would represent you at the meeting in Syracuse or virtually from home. And then just a few quick reminders about the budgets. I'm still seeing this at some of the budgets that I review from units across the state. So please make sure that when you are recording the collection of the New York State and national PTA portion of the dues, which is the $4 that you submit to New York State, they should not be included on your budget. They are not part of your income or expenses. It basically is a pass-through. You're just collecting that money on our behalf of New York State, and then we pass on the portion to national. So we consider this a below the line accounting, below the bottom line. So when you get to the bottom line of your budget, where you're showing your income and expenses and what your balance is, below that figure is where you can record for your members to see in full transparency how many members, how much money you've taken in, and how many members you have paid New York State for. Your portion, your local portion, is the only part that appears on the income lines. And then also, again, I want to remind everybody about a fundraiser that you should have separate income, totally what you've taken in for your fundraiser, and then separately the expenses related to that. It should really not be a net accounting, which means if you do sell, if you have a fun run, which I think is one of the more popular things that are happening this year, and your income is 40,000, but your expenses for it was 10,000, you should detail both of those rather than just put $30,000 under income. Again, this is something your region director, your region treasurer, your associate directors, whoever you're working with can help you with, and I'm certainly happy to help as well if you have any questions on that. So we all are in fundraising season for our PTAs, so we can support our budgets. So I want to remind everybody about our PTA guideline of 3 programs to every 1 fundraiser rule for your planning. 1, I want to define fundraiser. Those are things that you advertise exactly to be a fundraiser for your association. I am not talking about the ice cream social where it costs $2 for everybody to get an ice cream, and we sold $200 in tickets for that, and the ice cream cost us only $180, so we had a $20 left over. That's not considered a fundraiser, even though you've generated some funds from that. We are really talking about the things that you advertise to people to come and support our PTA. We are raising funds to support our budget. So that's the fundraiser part. And the programs, again, can be a wide variety. It can be a speaker at your meetings. It can be a family engagement night. It can be movie night. It can be the health and wellness fair that you have after your fun run. However you feel that you can define your programs where you're inviting your families and community in. New York State has created some charitable guidance on charitable gaming. I have the link here to it. You can find this on the New York State PTA website. That's what the link will take you to. Just as a reminder, if you are going to be using raffles or games of chance for a fundraiser. And really by games of chance, we're really talking more about like these pull tabs that are like you pay money for and you might be able to win some cash there. We're really kind of discouraging that type of fundraiser for a PTA unit. And then for raffles, we are talking about using, if you're choosing to use raffles, to raffle off a large prize. And the prizes for that are over $600 require you to do some IRS paperwork. And again, we're discouraging that. We are not discouraging basket raffles. And so we do have guidance in there. We want you to take a look at that if you are choosing to have a basket raffle. Those are usually a part, almost a family engagement event. And so even though they are considered gaming, because of the amount of money that you'll be taking in, you fall within certain guidance that you don't need a license and that type of thing. But we do encourage you to check out the charitable gaming guidance that we have on New York State PTA if you're going to do a basket raffle. And then finally, also bingo. Bingo for books or bingo just for fun at a meeting is okay, but if your bingo prizes are more than a $25 prizes, again, you want to look at the guidance there and reach out to your local authorities to make sure that you don't need an extra license to do a bingo night at school. And probably because it's that time of year, as we move into the holidays, I've been getting a lot of questions about units donating some of their funds to another 501c3 organization, or actually having a fundraiser where all of the money that's raised will go to a 501c3 organization. While this is acceptable, the number one thing that you want to know about donating funds to another 501c3 or raising funds is that the mission of that other 501c3 must be in line with our PTA mission. So if, for instance, you were wanting to do something for the American Cancer Society, we would say no, because that mission is for people of all ages and that are suffering from a terrible disease. What we would say is look for a pediatric cancer type organization or an arm of a larger organization that has a pediatric organization that you can donate to. And while this is acceptable, this type of sharing of our funds, I think it's important that you as an executive committee and treasurer, you may need to lead this conversation. I think we need to do a little bit of a self-assessment, a little bit of why do we want to do this? Why do we want to use our efforts to raise money for another organization? And I think our number one thing that we really need to look at is, are we actually supporting our other associations? Are we supporting our council? Are we supporting our region? Attending region events, attending region trainings? Are we supporting state and national PTA? Are we attending state events? Are we participating in trainings that the state and national are offering, or your region as well? And then, of course, the biggest support for state, national, and all PTAs is through membership. Are we actually working on membership in our unit this year? As you know, COVID, if there was anything that we did take a setback on at state and national PTA, is membership. So the state and national PTA, because of the structure that we have at the state level, over 50% of our revenue that we use on our budget to do the things that we need to do to support our units comes from membership. And so again, I just want to put that out there, that before we think about supporting another outside organization, that we really are making sure that we are supporting our own organization at every level. The next thing that I ask you to consider is, if you are doing an event, the time that you're asking for volunteers to run that event. Everybody's time is valuable, and we want to use our volunteers' time value in a way that we value it. And certainly we have a lot of our own events and activities that we need volunteers for. And so by adding an event that is for another organization, are we asking too much of our volunteers? So again, please consider that. And then finally, we know we are an advocacy organization over fundraising. So adding another fundraiser to your schedule, even though it may be a community builder, it may be perceived as something that's helping, we want to just make sure that we don't fall back into that perception, which we have been working on for many years, that we are not primarily a fundraising organization, but we're more of an advocacy organization. That is what our mission is about. Our fundraising really is only done to support the work that we need to do. We are not in the quote unquote PTA business of gaining and reserving a lot of funds. We really ask our units that when you are planning out your budget, that you only raise enough funds to cover your expenses for the year, because that's what we are, a year-to-year association. When the fiscal year ends, we start fresh. We start fresh with all new members or renewed members and a new budget. And so we should really be thinking more in a year-to-year type process. As treasurer, you are required to provide written reports monthly, no matter what type of meeting it is, executive committee, executive board, or general membership. So please make sure we have those reports ready to be presented. And if you physically can't attend the meeting, you should submit it to the president, who will ask somebody to present it on your behalf. They should be available for the members at the meeting. If it's who's ever attending, it should be available in a format that they can all see. Either you're sharing it on a screen, you're sharing it on paper copy, or you've emailed it to everybody so that they can look at it that way. I recommend for your budget reports that you follow your bank statement month, just to make it easier to keep track of things rather than a calendar month or from meeting to meeting, because obviously meetings to meetings can vary. All records should be available, especially at your general membership meetings. So not just your budget report, but you should have your ledger, you should have your backup for your ledger, as well as any bank statements that you have available for review by a member if they request it. Or if they have a question, you'll be able to answer it with what you have. And then of course the reports become part of our permanent records, and they are submitted to the secretary for filing. Another important piece of the treasurer work, and some of this should be completed already, our audit report for 2020-21 was due at your first meeting of the year. Again, the treasurer is not part of the audit committee, but they really are the one that should be making sure that the audit committee has met and has done their work and has created the report to be able to present. If that hasn't been done, if the audit hasn't been done or the report hasn't been presented, I urge you to take care of that immediately. We have, again, extensive instructions in the resource guide on how to complete the audit or financial review, along with, if you go onto the New York State website and look under trainings, we did an audit webinar earlier, and we have some documents there that are fillable that you can use to create your audit report. If you can't find them, please just feel free to send me an email and we can connect you to those. If you are a unit that has a lot of transactions or a high amount of transactions, you might want to consider doing a half-year audit so that at the end of the year, the audit is not so far away. Like if you're doing your audit in July and you're trying to remember something that happened or try to recreate something that happened the previous September, it could be time consuming. This way, if you do a half year and then you finish up at the end of the year with the second half, it can make things go smoother. I highly recommend an audit committee that is operating year round rather than just waiting till the spring to appoint them. So the good news about having an audit committee that is year round is those members of the audit committee can also be helpful in doing your monthly reconciliations. It familiarizes them with the work that you're doing and also will be an aid in making the audit go smoother. So the monthly reconciliations and the audit report, and I know many of you have heard this, but I'm going to say it again, they're required by our AIM Insurance now. They've always been required, the audit has always been required by PTA through our 501c3 regulations. Of course, monthly reconciliations always recommended, but now we have this additional layer of completing these to make sure that we maintain our fidelity bond insurance, which is the insurance that protects us against crime, theft, and embezzlement. Oops, sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Oh, where am I? Okay, so Member Hub has really become an important part of what we're doing with our units. This is a company that we contract with to help us at the minimum maintain a database to make our tracking of our membership a little bit easier and more efficient than the old way of paper and pencil and us sending you cards and you selling cards and then sending some back or ordering more. So again, a more modern approach to life, our Member Hub database. And Dana really does a lot of work on Member Hub. She is our liaison to Member Hub. And so she's going to take it from here to talk a little bit about all the features that Member Hub can offer.
Thanks, Patty. All right, so we do have a lot of different features that you can use. There are some that you will definitely need to use. So let me start there. So as a treasurer, obviously, if you're collecting online membership through our online membership system, you will have money that's being deposited every Friday into your bank account from Stripe. And on Friday, you would be able to download what's called a payout report. And I'm going to go a little bit out of order here. But the payout report is going to tell you the details of that deposit. So it's going to detail out how much of that money was membership money, how much was maybe spiritware or something else that you're selling in your store. So you'll be able to sort that report and be able to detail out that deposit when you're putting that on your records for the bank. So you definitely want to find the payout reports, and those are located in the online store module, which is in the left-hand side of your navigation. And then if you click on view orders, you'll see the payout reports listed in the top right-hand corner where you can click that and see what's available to download. So if you haven't done that yet, the reports are still there. And you can download each of those and reconcile all of those deposits going into your bank account. And hopefully all of it's for membership, lots of members coming in. So we're really excited about that. So besides the payout reports, you do have in that online store, you have all of your sales reports. If you want to view your orders and export those to see all of the details about the sales that are happening on your store. So you'll definitely want to do that. It's also the place where you'll manage the Stripe account. If you ever have to, change the bank account information, you do have access to that, or at least the person who set it up has access to that. As far as documents and file storage, we do have a way for you to have a place to store documents that you want to have available for future executive committee members. So you might, and Patty might need to help me out here with all of what those could be, but examples would be a copy of your bylaws, a copy of forms or documents, your sales tax exempt certificate, a copy of that, also the ST-119 form that you use to present to vendors to show that you're sales tax exempt. All of those things can be stored in Member Hub, and then they can be downloaded, for future use, so that it doesn't have to be in someone's private, drive or Google Drive or something like that. It's actually stored within something that will be passed on to the next executive committee. Patty, is there other documents that treasurers might want to use that for?
I think you covered what I was
Okay.
thinking, but again, every unit, you could have, again, your procedures in there, and any other instructions that you want to give out as far as the best way to work with the treasurer. So again, if you have other documents with instructions about how to fill out your vouchers or that type of thing, all of that can go there.
Yeah, and an example would be the voucher itself, to have the actual forms and all of those things that you're expecting, your volunteers to use. A good place is to have them right there available for download. Now, you can set up a hub if you'd like to keep those documents private, only accessible to hub members, maybe executive committee hub. You can store them there, or you can store them as a publicly accessible document for members or whoever has access to your Member Hub site to be able to download and see as well. So that'll depend on how your PTA wants to operate and has that in your procedures. We also have fundraiser reports if you're using the fundraising modules that are available through Member Hub, and I highly recommend that you check those out because it's a quick and easy way to have fundraisers already set up and available in your store. So if you have access to that and you've set that up, you will have reports available for that as well. We do also have the 990 confirmation submissions, and just don't want to confuse you. It's not where you file your 990, but it's where you tell us that you have filed your 990 and that you have a record on your site, so that the next treasurer will be able to see that you did file it and when you filed it, and therefore they know to follow suit and to do the same. So this is there's a 990 confirmation submission where you're going to enter the information just to tell us, when it was done. And when I say us, I mean basically the people on your in your executive committee, and we of course at the state level can see that information just to help you out and make sure that you're filing and that you're not getting behind with the IRS. And we try to keep people from getting into that situation. So, and that's coming up. November 15th is the deadline for the 990 submission. So hopefully that has been done. If you need to check on the status of that, you can contact the state office and we can look that up for you if you need help. So I think I've covered pretty much membership dues, accounting, of course, can't forget about that. So when you have members to pay for, we do ask you to log in once a month into the memberships module and click on the remit state dues button. And that's going to show you how many members have been added or who have purchased online since the last time you made the dues payment. So we do want you to make those payments. Hopefully everyone has made their first payment for in good standing by October 31st. If not, please do so right away so we can get you back into good standing. But once a month, we ask you to log in and see if there's been new members added and to make that ACH payment. And just be careful the first time you enter the bank account information, make sure that you're entering the routing number in the proper spot and the account number. I did have a few people who entered the check number as part of their account number. And of course that didn't go through the bank. So you want to make sure that you're putting in that information right the first time and then storing it so you don't have to ever enter it again. And you can just click the button next month and make those ACH payments. So I think that's it as far as this slide goes.
Dina, thank you so much. I just want to remind everybody that Patty and Dina are sharing so much information that we're throwing at you. So please continue to put your questions in the chat, and they'll be happy to respond to your questions in the latter part. Thank you.
And Dana, can you just confirm if there is a Member Hub webinar or workshop that's been recorded that's on the New York State website? I believe you did one in July.
Yes, there is one out there in July, from July, the summer leadership training. But I think also we have a couple that have been added from our region support, Sonia Verilla, our region director. She's done a couple of more presentations, and I think there's going to be even more done at convention as well. And then also, if you have questions regarding items that you're not able to get information, get your answers answered here, your questions answered here, you can also send an email to or start a ticket at the support.memberhub.com. Yeah, that's it. Support.memberhub.com to actually start a ticket to ask a question if you need to.
Great. Thank you.
You're
All
welcome.
right. Let's see if I can keep up with my, nope, wrong way. So one other thing, aspect of PTA, again, as a 501c3, we are granted tax exempt status. And the tax exempt status comes under two different categories. Under the federal government, which is and the IRS, which is the one that gives us the 501c3 designation as a nonprofit, so that we can accept. One of the biggest parts about that is accepting donations that a person can use as a charitable contribution on their taxes. And the idea that your income is not going to be taxed as a unit. So all your fundraising, any other money that you take in, if you receive a grant or anything else, none of that will be taxed as part of your tax exempt status from the federal government as a 501c3. Then on the flip side, New York State PTA grants us a tax exempt status. And we talked about that in the ST119, a tax exempt certificate. And what that allows is our units can purchase items without paying the New York State sales tax, your combination of state and county tax. So those are the two different aspects of, and we're going to go into them just a little bit deeper now, of the tax exempt status. So it is a privilege to be a 501c3 organization because it does give us many benefits. As I said, contributions by our donors are treated as charitable contributions for them, for their tax purposes. And in order to maintain our 501c3, we have to make sure that we are following our mission. Talked a lot about that already, but we have to be organized and operating according to our mission. And as a result of that, we are non-sectarian, we are non-commercial. So again, we really want to limit how much we can be seen as doing business rather than the work of a nonprofit. And then nonpartisan. Elections day is over, but this actually comes more into play during school board elections. We just want to remind everybody about we aren't in a position where we can endorse any candidates for any type of office. We really shouldn't be engaging in any political activity along that line. And then our amount of lobbying that we do as a unit total should be an insubstantial amount of our work. We can talk about legislation. We can advocate for positions. We just cannot be doing, stepping beyond that into lobbying, though we do have our executive director is our official lobbyist for our association. And so her work incorporates the insubstantial amount. And then also to maintain our 501c3 status, our resources as a PTA cannot be used for the private benefit of an individual. The term for that is called inurement. And what this stands for is, again, the work that we do, the fundraising that we do, our use of our funds cannot benefit somebody who's part of our association. A good example of that is if we had a chairperson who owned a t-shirt company and could make spirit wear for our unit, and comes to us and said, I want to be I'm a active member and I want to be your spirit wear supplier. And the PTA says, oh, that's great. We'll just order everything from you and that'll be great. That is something that would be considered inurement, because that person has used their PTA influence to benefit their business. The ways to not have that happen is, if you have a member that owns a t-shirt company and wants to do their spirit wear, you should go out and get quotes from 2 or 3 other companies and then bring them all together, all of the quotes, and make the decision as to which one of the vendors can offer your members and your association the best contract. And if that winds up being the person who is the active PTA volunteer, it is perfectly acceptable. You just have to make sure that you have done your due diligence before just electing to go with one person because you know them. Some other cautions that could affect your 501c3 status. Again, this is probably one of our most common questions that we have, and that is when there is a student or a family that has faced with a hardship, a critical illness, or some tragedy that has happened that's unpreventable. People will approach the PTA and say, we have to do something to help. We have, this is what we're all about. We're here for families and children. Yes, we are here for family and children, but we're not here for a specific family or a specific child. And in this, again, as a treasurer, this is probably the hardest question that you have to say no to. And so again, if the question comes to you as treasurer, I highly recommend that you gather your executive committee and have the decision come from the executive committee and not from the treasurer specifically. Again, general welfare or disaster relief are 2 things that we can't do. So if there's flooding and that's probably been the most common one in New York State, but if there was a fire or any of those things, PTA is not in the position to use our funds to reach out to those affected. What we do, the work that we do, the beneficiaries have to be part of our charitable class, and our charitable class is the community that we serve. So it has to be, the total community has to be the one that we're considering to be the beneficiary of the work that we do. It should be large enough, our charitable class, that people can say that we're just working for the benefit of this family, or we're working for the benefit of this classroom, or we're working for the benefit of just the people that live on this street. We have to really make sure that our beneficiary class, charitable class, is our whole community in general. Again, not a pre-selected group of people. Again, these are IRS guidelines. It's not pre-selected, so we can't say we want to start a PTA just to help grades 3 and 4 at the school in our community when there's grades K through 5 in the building. So when a situation happens where you are, as a PTA, approached for help for an individual, for a family that has, again, experienced some loss, hardship, or tragedy, and I apologize for the little typo there, we have to think of ways to help outside of PTA. So again, we are really good at organizing ourselves. So let's organize ourselves outside of PTA to be helpful. We can use our resources as far as our communication tools. We can announce at meetings if there's going to be a fundraiser to help a person, or that just to let them know that if members want to make a donation to help people, this is where you donate. A bank is collecting on their behalf. Another organization that has this as part of their mission is collecting on their behalf. You can spread the word as much as you'd like. You can volunteer at an event that might be being held. You just can't do it as PTA. So let's try to, again, be supportive of each other. And just remember, I know that this is a hard question when it comes to us, and sometimes it's our administrators will come to the PTA and say, look, we have a family in need, and can you help us? We have to make sure that we let everyone know that this is not only a PTA position, but it really is our 501c3, and we don't want to do anything to jeopardize that, because the 501c3 does benefit everybody. And so again, we will use our resources to help in a different way. But again, it is a hard way to have to say no. I personally have had a situation when I was region director, when I was called in to do this and had to say no, and literally there were tears everywhere. And really it makes you feel like, oh, I feel so awful that I'm not allowing this fundraiser that was suggested for a young critically ill child. I mean, it is the worst feeling in the world. We have to be diplomatic about it, but we have to remember that unfortunately in the world we live in, what's important to one group now, next year could be, another situation could happen, and then it will be, while you help them, why didn't you help us? So I think, again, we should, as an executive committee, decide how we are going to handle these things almost before they happen, so that we're ready and we can be helpful as a community member, not necessarily as a PTA member. And that kind of dovetails a little bit into the whole Sunshine Fund that used to be very popular years ago. The IRS has asked and actually has put in regulations that don't allow this type of sunshine, or sometimes people call it rainy day funds. Again, that's PTA funds being used to either give a gift to somebody that is been ill, or a staff member that's getting married, or a member that has had a child, a brand new baby. We want to send a gift, we want to send flowers. That you can do that if you organize that, again, outside of PTA, and you can't have a line on your budget to say, we have, we're going to plan $200 worth of sunshine or rainy day funds this year. And if anybody, has any of these situations, we'll just write the money from there. Again, that's kind of goes back to the charitable class. The money is more going to an individual than the charitable class, and that is against IRS regulations. So again, if you choose to do sunshine and rainy day funds, do that after a meeting has been gavelled closed, and say you want to make a collection and do that. And again, it doesn't become part of your reports or your minutes or any of your procedures. Dana talked briefly about the 990. Yes, the deadline to file is November 15th. And really, we talk about the 990 almost as a tax return, but it's really not a tax return. It is a tool for us as an exempt organization to reach back to the IRS and say, yes, we are still organized. We are still operating as a tax exempt entity. We are following all the laws. We are not doing things that we shouldn't be doing. We are working on our mission. We are doing our best to fulfill it, and we are protecting our organization's money. So really, that's what the IRS is looking for. They really don't want to know how much money we take in per se, or what we're expending our money on. They want us to just tell them by way of this 990 that we are doing what we promised to them in exchange for the 501c3. That being said, if our income creeps up over the $50,000 level, we do have to fill out the 990 EZ form. And the IRS does ask a lot of questions there. They ask, what money you have taken in and what you did use, what your expenses went for, and what are you actually following the rules. You have to check a lot of yes and no boxes. So one of the things we have is the File 990. We contract with them, file990.org, to help assist us with filling out those forms. You receive emails from them as a unit. You will receive those emails until your filing has been accepted by the IRS. So once you file and you've been accepted, you don't receive the emails anymore. If you think you filed and you're still receiving the emails, there is a glitch, and you need to reach out to us. We know that we have had some issues with that this year, where people, there was a final box to click to submit that didn't get clicked. It got moved from the place it used to be with File 990, and people are missing it. And so we want to make sure that we get things filed by November 15th. If you miss the November 15th and you're filing either the EZ or the postcard, which is the simpler one, go ahead and you can file it past the due date. We would prefer not. You can technically be fined for filing late. but let's go ahead and get them filed because the IRS is just more interested in knowing that we are fulfilling our agreement to them. So that's a little bit about the federal side of tax exempt, just a little bit now about the New York State sales tax exempt. Again, you need to file the form 119.1 that has your address on it and your certificate number, and it's signed by your key officer or yourself as an officer when you're going around to do the shopping. If you're using the 119, you have to use PTA funds to make the payment. So again, if you're shopping at Walmart and you're picking up the candy for trunk and treat and you're going to be charged tax, the money that you use to pay for the candy, if you want to use the tax-free form, has to come from the PTA. So it either has to come in the form of a PTA check, or again, if your unit is decided that they have the maturity level to do the credit card, it would be the credit card in your PTA name. Again, one of the things you should have in your procedures is how you're going to handle sales tax reimbursement. So if you have chair people that are out shopping and they don't have PTA funds with them, but they need something right away and they do have to purchase it and they use their own funds and they ask for reimbursement, it is up to you as a PTA to handle how you are going to reimburse that person. Will you reimburse them for just what they paid minus the tax, or will you reimburse them for the tax? That's entirely up to you as the PTA unit, how you handle that. So the fact that we're sales tax exempt on our purchases does not mean that we are exempt from collecting sales tax if it's required. And so I'm going to talk about just briefly two key areas where more than likely you should be collecting sales tax. So if you are selling goods either in person or online at your Member Hub store, regularly, on frequency, and continuity, which means every day. So if you have, again, your spiritware up for sale, either in person at events or on your Member Hub store on a continuous basis, you will need to collect sales tax. So the way that we recommend for that, and I think most of us do that, is we only have periods of time where we sell our spiritware or whatever it is you're choosing to sell. Limit the period. So if you do it, you let people know the store is open, it's going to be open for a week or two, and then it's going to be closed. So get your orders in. You are fine not to collect sales tax. If you are operating, and we do have some units across the state that operate school stores, some of them are just, simple little things for the young kids to come in and buy erasers and little trinkets, up to some of our high schools do like farmers markets, snack stands, and that type of thing for their students. If you are doing that, if your store is open on a regular basis, every Wednesday morning from 9 until 12, every day from 10 to 2, you are required to collect sales tax on items that are typically sales taxed. A lot of food isn't already sales taxed in New York State, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you are selling items that generate sales tax at your local grocery store or your local, again, Walmart or Target, then you're required to charge sales tax if you're doing it on a regular basis. Again, if your periods are inconsistent, you're okay. And then also in situations where you're doing sales of goods, and of course the most common example is Scholastic books. So if you're doing something like a Scholastic book fair where you're just having the books come into the school, you're selling them, and then you're sending back what you don't sell, but you've never really owned the books, you are required to charge sales tax because you're basically acting as an agent for Scholastic. The difference then, if you're doing a fundraiser, for instance, if you are doing a holiday shop, which a lot of our units do, they're purchasing their items on consignment. So when the item comes into school and you have that sale, technically once you sell it, you own it, and so you don't have to charge sales tax because you've brought the item as a PTA. So again, if you're acting as an agent and you're never taking ownership of the items, you do have to collect sales tax. And what you'll do is you'll collect the sales tax at the point of sale, but like with Scholastic, they will remit the sales tax for you. But if you're doing it and you're collecting the sales tax and your vendor is not willing to remit the sales tax, you will have to handle doing that yourself. And again, I urge you to reach out to your region director, your region treasurer, or myself on that, and we'll help you walk you through the process. It is very simple. It is a form that you can fill out online to New York State, and you remit the sales tax by check, or you can, I think, can do an ACH transfer as well there. That would be permittable. But again, just, work with your vendors when you are doing sales to make sure, again, a lot of people are contracting with people to do spirit wear on demand. That is sales taxable. So just make sure that you're working with your vendors to know the details of how your sale is going to work to determine if you need to charge sales tax. Just recently, we held a webinar for insurance. I have a link here to our March one. We just held a insurance webinar last Thursday. Our agents from AIM Insurance joined us for a presentation and questions and answers. So I have the link up here for the one they did with us in March. It's the information from them has been slightly updated. So if you keep this link and you'll have access to this, obviously the link in this recording as well as the slide deck. The new one will be up on YouTube pretty much in the same location as what I have here. So I urge you to take a look for that. If you have questions about your insurance coverage, Dana is somebody that can answer those questions. I can answer those questions. And at the bottom, you can see you can contact AIM. They're very responsive either by email or their 800 number. As treasurer, the most important thing, again, as you're reviewing your programs, and we talked about your 3 programs to everyone fundraiser, all of the work that you're doing, we really recommend that this playlist of events, which you can find in our resource guide, the stop, play, and pause list, really helps you to make sure that what you're doing limits the liability issues that you might have with your PTA. So again, I encourage everybody to make a copy of this. It can be printed right from the resource guide and keep it with you in your files. So when you're at activities or at meetings and somebody says, hey, I have a great idea, let's, like have, a bounce house festival, you can, really refer to your list here and say, unfortunately, our insurance doesn't cover us for a bounce house. So we're going to have to think of another event that would be as much fun. Dana has just jumped on, so I think she wants to share some things about insurance.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I know you covered it earlier, Patty, about the fidelity bond and the 2 things. We have to do the audit, annual audit, and then we also have to have the bank statement review. But I just want to make sure that it's not just the reconciliation that has to be done. The bank statements have to be reviewed by a non-bank signer every month and signed off on each of the statements. So you should have, and the way that Elgin told us about it on the webinar last week was we should have the bank statements being sent either to a school or to a person who's not a signer. They'll open the bank statement, they'll review the bank statement, and then they will go to the treasurer to process the bank reconciliation. So it's a process where there is someone who is not a part of signing checks who will be able to review those. And that has to be done on a monthly basis in order to maintain your insurance coverage. So I just want to point that out because I know that is confusing for some. And of course, we do our reconciliations, but we do have to have that extra review as well. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. But just to clarify, your bank statement is going to go to a signer. It's going to have to, the bank statement will go to the signer and they'll pick it up at school, or it'll, if you arranged for it to go to your address, or if you're doing it electronically. But once you have that statement, yes, you have to pass it over to a non-signer, which is why it's great to have that audit committee, because those people on the audit committee also can't be signers. So if you have your audit committee all set, you have your signers, what they'll do is they'll get the bank statement from the treasurer who will ask them to do the reconciliation. And it's not just a reconciliation of, we started with this, we deposited this much according to the statement, and yes, that all is correct. And then, oh yes, we wrote these checks, and yes, that's our balance. It really should be a comparison of the work that was done. So again, the ledger should be present for the person to do that. And also the person should be familiar enough with PTA. So again, for instance, if we had our big family night and, you know, we had movie night and it was $5 to get in and we know there was like 100 people there, so we should have taken in $500. It may, if that doesn't appear on the ledger and on the bank statement and you're doing the reconciliation, all of that will still work out and the $500 could be off floating somewhere. So you have to be familiar with what's going on in the unit. And so you'll say, oh, wait a minute, we had an event. We should see the money in the ledger. We should see the money on our bank statement. And that's all part of the reconciliation. So it's a little bit of a elevated reconciliation per se. So you're not really just balancing your checkbook, you're doing a little bit more. So again, that's why it's great to have these familiar people. But thank you for that, Dana. I think the AIM insurance webinar was very informative, and I do recommend that everyone jot that down. And as soon as it's up, to give it a good watch. And it's not long. I think we only were on for about a half hour. Okay, so now I'm stuck here. I think I'm stuck.
Are you?
I believe I am stuck. Okay, let me just do it this way. Sorry about that.
There you go.
Thanks. Gifts to school. So again, we are all affiliated and associated with the school building, and we certainly want to do everything we can to make that school building the best place it can be for our students, our families. And a lot of times we recognize that there are things that the school could have, or we would be asked for things for the school to have that would make it the best place it can be. Well, we are not opposed as PTA for units to support the school with the purchase of items. We do want to be cautious on what we're doing. So we don't want to be in a position where we are seen as only that, where we are purchasing things for the school to make the building better, because really that is the role of the school district. And so we want to make sure that we're advocating rather than giving the funds, we're advocating for the school district to improve our buildings. But we do recognize sometimes things can come up that could help the building. And so we have to be very careful and considering what we're doing. I will use an example. Perhaps the pickup line is very long for after school, no matter what grade you're in, from pre-K all the way to grade 12. And, you know, maybe it would be advantageous to have a bench for people to sit on while they're waiting to pick up their children. That is something like a certain item that, you know, a PTA unit might consider doing. So if you were to consider doing this, what's important that you, number one, do is that you make sure from your building administration that they would want you to do this, so that they would accept, if there was to be a bench to appear, would they accept it? Are they okay with it? Next thing would be that it shouldn't be the PTA outrightly purchasing the item, because it's going to stay at the school longer than when the PTA is around. It's, you know, it'll be there all day, 24/7, and the PTA is not there 24/7. So we want to make sure that the school and the district take ownership of the item. So the way we do that is by granting the funds to the district. And in the resource guide, section 5B, which is created with the help of our insurance company, we have a great form there, a sample form that you can use to document the money that you would like to donate to the school district for the purchase of this bench. Now, years ago, we used to talk about, you know, don't give money to the school district because you don't know, they can spend it any way they want. Even if you give them money to buy a bench, if they decide that they would rather have, you know, a new rug for the front hall in the other building down the street, they can go ahead and do that. Well, this form will help mitigate that. So, and again, this form you can fill out this form and you specifically say what you're giving the money for and what is it to be used for, where. And so if the school district accepts it, then they're committed to doing it as directed. It's and they're also committed to giving you an accounting of the funds. So again, if you give $500 to the school district, you gift it, they accept it, and they're going to they have to buy the bench. If the bench only came to $475, technically they should return and should account for the money and return the $25 to you because they didn't have to use it. So again, that's all detailed on this
If I
form.
can interrupt you here,
Sure.
this is a really very useful area that you're covering here that, many of us have had to deal with this. Does also using this form and committing the money rather than the object release the PTA from maybe a liability of someone, climbing over the bench and falling? Would you consider
Yes,
that
it
to
will.
also be an asset?
Yes, it will decrease. We can never fully get away from liability because, again, if the PTA name is on something, even if a lawyer will trace it back. So again, we want everyone to be eyes wide open when they do these types of things to know that, as a PTA leader now in 22, if we decide to do this bench, we're really kind of committing every PTA until that bench is no longer there to thinking about this liability. And again, it's not going to be like top of mind, but it's a back of mind thing that liability always exists. So we want to be very careful and cautious when we do this. And again, whenever we're doing anything as a PTA, and just to jump back to the idea of getting a credit card, like if your PTA deems themselves mature enough to handle having a credit card, that it will be used properly for what it's meant for, understand that if that PTA this year passes that credit card and all that to the next PTA, you're obligating them to also follow those procedures. So you want to make sure you have everything in place, because harkening back to, we are a year-to-year association, so we really want to be careful not to obligate future PTAs to things that they're not willing to support or are unable to support. Just as an aside, this was an interesting thing. Those of you that are on Facebook, PTA leaders nationally, right? They have a Facebook group and people chime in with all kinds of things. I think it was yesterday, somebody chimed in and said, our principal has asked us to purchase a vacuum cleaner for every classroom in the building, with the idea that at the end of the day, a rotating student will handle vacuuming the classroom. Now, there's a lot to think about there. One, we're asking children to vacuum, okay, we're lucky we can handle that at home, but I don't know that that's something that we want to be using our child's school day for vacuuming, even though it's a worthwhile task that needs to get done. So we're purchasing vacuums for every classroom. Now, once we have the vacuums, what happens when they break? Who's going to be responsible for that if we as PTA purchase the vacuum? Again, one of our PTA leaders in New York State raised the question, what about the bags? Who's going to provide the vacuum cleaner bags? Because they'll fill up quickly and then we'll have to keep resupplying them. And if the vacuums go, obviously they're going to last more than a year. Again, do future PTAs have to plan an expense line for possible vacuum cleaner repair and supplying the bags? So, that was a great example of us really kind of thinking things through. Like, I know principals and other administrators might have these great ideas, but I think we have to really think them through step by step. What are we being asked to do? Is this really something that fits the PTA mission? Is this what we should be doing? And then further, again, let's make this a group response to whoever has asked for something along the line that you have to say no to. I just want to put in a little plug for another line that we would like to think would appear on everybody's PTA expense lines, and that is to recognize and celebrate your volunteers, your community supporters with awards. Recognitions, and we have them available at the region, the state, and the national level. I have the link there to go to the New York State PTA page to learn about our variety of awards. Again, they're not all just for PTA people. Some are for communities. Our honorary life membership in New York State is for anybody who supports the mission of PTA. They don't have to be an active PTA member or volunteer. But all that's detailed there. But I do think that, again, this is a way for us to show that PTA is committed to the community. And again, we want to partner with all different people. And so these types of, these awards are a great way to do that. So some of them can be purchased for as low as $1 to $2, all the way up to a more extensive amount, and you'll see that there. We're coming near to the end, so I see the chat box has been pretty active, so we'll be moving on to questions.
I got it under control. I'm ready for you.
All right, I can't wait.
It was very active. We
Um,
love getting these questions, and they're all really, really very good questions.
All right, I can't believe I've talked for so long. I only have 15 more
No,
minutes.
this was great. I learned
We'll
a
get
ton,
them.
Patty. Thank you so much. And Treasury, my goodness, kudos to you and Dana and everyone who does Treasury, who's on this call, on this webinar, because it's definitely a very involved area of PTA work. So we're going to start right away
Okay,
without
let's do
further
it.
delay, handling the questions. I'm going to start from the bottom up, so don't be alarmed. I have them
Okay.
all, and then keep them coming as well. The district has 4 elementary schools. They're closing one of the schools. This is a very frequent question that we get. Can the funds be distributed on the other 3 schools, PTAs amongst them? Or what do they do with their funds, the unit that's
Yes.
closing?
Yes. Again, that goes back to you can donate money to another 501c3, and certainly if you have to donate money in a school closing or a PTA closing because of the school closing, yes, you can spread the money out. I mean, if you feel you need to like separate it to like 10% of the kids are going here, we're sending 10% of the money. That's an individual unit choice.
And remember to take a vote on how to disperse your money. It's not an individual decision, so a vote needs to be taken on that decision. So if the executive committee feels like it should go to the other 3 units, be sure that a vote is taken at a meeting that's announced with all the requirements for that. The next question is whether the 3 units should merge. I don't believe we recommend that.
Should they merge? Oh, interesting.
Should
Again,
they merge? Should they merge?
I would
The other units.
say, I know that we have some units that are going through some school districts that are going through the Princeton plan and some other things. I would definitely reach out to your region director for guidance on that particular thing. You know, that's again an individual group decision of how you're going to run your PTAs. I personally believe individual building PTAs are the most effective and efficient, but we do have group PTAs, combined units, and that in places where they work as well.
The next question is the unit has been asked to donate gift funds for a playground. Do we recommend that they gift funds for a playground? The assumption was that it's not recommended to donate money for a playground.
You know, we continue to caution on that only because of the liability part of it. If you were to be purchasing a piece of equipment for a playground all the way up to a full playground, which is a considerable amount of time, energy, and volunteer help needed. So we don't recommend that because really it's for the community. The school district should be providing that. Again, it's all about gifting the money to the district so that they can handle it from the point of purchase. In other words, the maintenance of it. If something should happen, they would be the point person on, you know, the liability. They would be the lead person. I mean, eventually it could trace back to the PTA. But again, you don't have control of that playground once you put it in. I think the district does. The district, it's their property. I think that really the money should go to the best and only way to do that is to pass the money to the district. I do want to caution people that are that have 3 elementary schools in a district or 4. Please be mindful of your other schools' property. So again, if you are a PTA and you have the ability to raise enough funds to build a playground, but the other 3 schools don't, think about your community as a whole and make sure that you're being equitable in your community. So again, PTA, we want to always focus on that. We are for every child in the big picture. So again, it's really not good practice for one PTA to go ahead and reach out and raise a significant amount of funds and create something that the other schools that cause inequity with the other schools.
And if Dana's still with us, I would like to pose the next question to you. And the question is, there you are. If I filed the 990, how do I make sure that it went through? Are we supposed to get a confirmation or that it was processed?
Yes, you should have received a confirmation when it was accepted by the IRS. So if there's a question on that, you can reach out. I do have a dashboard that I can check at the state office. So you can send me an email, and I think my email is listed right there on the screen. You can send me an email and I can check that dashboard to see if it's been processed, especially the 990 ends are quick a turnaround. Sometimes the 990 EZs take a while for us to be able to see that they've been accepted.
And along with that question, Dina, if I can continue, how does the new treasurer or the new president know or determine if the 990 was filed for the previous year?
If they have the 990 submission that's been entered on MemberHub, they would be able to tell that. But also they can check either they can go to the IRS site and check themselves if they would like. We can certainly show you how to do that, but you can also reach out to me at the state office and I will be able to direct them further on where they stand.
Same for me. I think I'm on that IRS check website every day.
Yeah.
Just to, you know, check up on units, and so it's all recorded there. It's actually kind of interesting, but anyway.
Thank you, Dina. And Patty, is it up to the individual unit whether to reimburse members for the sales tax when they submit an expense voucher?
Yes. Yes, and that
You
should
did
be
say that.
decided ahead of
Mhm.
time before the year starts, so that when you have your chairman in place, and you know the chairman are, you know, you're sending them out to do their work for the year. They've put in their plan of work of what they want to do. You let them know right up front that you want them to, you know, you give them a copy of the ST119 and say you would prefer that, and whenever possible to have PTA funds to pay so that you can avoid paying the sales tax. But again, we're all volunteers and we know sometimes it's unavoidable. So make your best decision.
And do you recommend this is like in the unit procedures maybe? So it's not on a case by case and we don't reimburse
totally, yeah.
one person and not the other, but
Yes.
make it uniform across the board. So
Yes.
there's no, difficulty.
Establish that
way?
procedure ahead of time. Yes.
Establish ahead of time. Great. And okay, there's a question. If the unit is buying books for a classroom, can they use the tax exempt form to buy these books?
Yes, if you're if it's Scholastic, and I could have clarified that too. Yes, at the Scholastic book sale, if the families come in, they have to pay tax. If a teacher is buying for her classroom or the PTA is buying to donate to the classroom, those are tax-free, sales tax-free.
So they can use their tax exempt form.
Yes.
There's also a question about being told that the bank statements should not be mailed to the schools and should go to the officers. How do you feel about that?
Again, I think it's important that you work with your set of officers and make that decision. So again, COVID obviously proved that we can't always have access to the schools. So we were, recommending that if the treasurers and the president could could get the statement to their home, that would be the best thing. Obviously, we encourage if you can have read only online access, which is great. You can't do any banking online, but you can still look at your account online. A lot of banks offer that. We recommend that as well. But yeah, I mean, ideally, as in the past, it went to the school so that the person, either the president or the treasurer could pick it up and review it as quickly as possible. But, I know with COVID, it's still kind of tough to get into the schools. So again, make that a procedure, because once COVID is done and you want to go back to the other procedure, you can just vote in the new one. But make a decision on who should have the best receive the statement.
And we're being asked if we have expense forms that we can recommend using. Do we have samples of expense forms, remittance forms, etc.?
No, I'm going to say no. We're working on all of those things. We're working on a reconciliation form. It's just been a little bit
and
tough,
there are some available online, not through New York State PTA for the time being. They can
Right,
Search will
and
definitely adapt to your unit needs.
And yes, and again, I would say reach out to your region because most regions have them as well.
Perfect. Also, we were asked if we can recommend a low limit credit card that the unit can get.
No, I don't. I know I've had that question before. I don't. I mean, I would say work with your bank and get one that, you know, that connects to your account. So it's one that the bank issues. That's the best I can do.
And on a related question, the unit received a debit card because the bank uses it for identification when people walk into the branch for transactions. Is that okay?
You know, I don't recommend it. There's got to, if there's a better way, if they could work with the bank to find out. I mean, if they can restrict, you know, if it's a check cashing, I mean, I guess we have to think about, you know, what we can do with that. I mean, I'm not familiar with that process. So again,
and we went back to the branch and told them, please switch this to a card that is not a debit card, and they were able to do that. So they may automatically send these out, but if you go back to the branch and say, we would like a card that we can use in the ATM machine for deposits only, they're able to produce such a card, and it's used for identification just as much.
Okay, so there, yeah. So again, I don't want to tell you to switch banks, but I really, if, you know, if the constraints are that, I mean, work with your banker. I think that's the best thing. And then again, procedures are everything. So again, if there is a debit card and there's no other choice, which again, we highly do not recommend, make sure that there's procedures, who has possession of the card, who's allowed to use the card, all of those things, because that's the only thing, again, that you need to protect yourself. Again, our insurance company will tell you right now that their #1 claim for the last 10 years has been embezzlement and theft rather than liability. They've been in business for 32 years, and it has switched from liability to embezzlement and theft. And again, those of you that have been on with me before know I will say this all the time. As region director, I had 2 significant embezzlement issues, and both times it was the person that you least expected. It was the most trusted person both times, and everybody was just shocked that this happened, and it's not a pleasant situation to go through. So again, I just, as many procedures as you can have in place just to make this a more pleasant experience for everybody is the way to go.
Dana or Patty, or both of you, on the topic of PayPal, the question was, are we saying or assuming that PayPal is a peer-to-peer app, or if it's not? There was a similar question saying, but PayPal runs Venmo, or the other way.
Yes. Okay.
Can you
So
clarify?
I'll do that really quick. PayPal owns Venmo. Yes. PayPal is, again, offers a nonprofit rate, and PayPal charges fees for their use. So again, they are a higher level of security, bank level security in the transactions that happen with PayPal. The same with Square, the same with Stripe. All of those things are acceptable. And why they are acceptable, and you know they're acceptable, is because they charge fees, and those fees are what pays for the protection. Peer-to-peer app like Venmo, up until recently, you could send money to anybody, and people could send you money at no charge. Obviously, free isn't always best. Those of you that use Venmo now know, if you're not using Venmo for business, when you're using regular Venmo, they are asking you now when you want to send, is this for goods or services? And if you say yes, which you should if it's PTA, a fee is being charged to you as the PTA. So again, peer-to-peer apps, all of their user agreements would be violated by a PTA using them. So again, as a good community member, we are not in the position of using these things where we are using a workaround. And it's just not a way to safeguard our funds. Our Venmo, and again, I apologize for how long it has taken, but Venmo, again, keeps changing the rules. Our peer-to-peer Venmo / Zelle, Cash App guidance will be out in the next 48 hours and accessible on the PTA website. But again, I know that there are people out there that feel they have good experiences with Venmo. We, again, had a brief conversation about that on our Facebook page. And one of our PTA leaders who's in the banking industry has said the increase of scams related to Venmo are on the rise. So again, it's just one other thing. I get it. I understand it. I understand the convenience of it when I'm sending, money to, my siblings to share, the cost of a gift that we're buying for somebody. But for PTA, it just does, it's not set up for us to use. And as much as I don't know that in the long run, the benefits are there for us to use it. So I really want us to be cautious with our members' money. It's not our money. It's basically the decision.
Thank you for that. And Dana, the question is, how can we help a unit locate the original ST-119? Is it possible to help them locate the ST-119?
Yeah, if they have lost the original certificate or the ST-119-1, which they use to carry around with them for sales tax exemption, they will have to reach out to New York State. Now, they can do that over the phone, or they can do that via email. We do have instructions on, how to retrieve, get a new certificate, copy, that kind of thing. So we can put that guidance out. We'll make sure that's on, Patty, we'll make sure that's on the website.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get that out on the website so that we have that available.
For the time being, can they also
reach
email
out.
you for
Yeah,
either one of us?
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yeah.
I send out the instructions. I have it all set to go. And again, just to clarify, when we're saying you have to reach out to New York State, you literally have to reach out to New York State Taxation Department,
yeah.
not New York State PTA.
Taxes. Mhm.
Yeah.
Reach out to us and we'll tell you how to reach
I've
out
had
to
to
New York
do that.
State.
Exactly.
And they're very efficient. They're very quick. They're very quick.
Mhm. And why are fundraisers included as both an expense and an income? Can you clarify
Sure.
on the budget?
Sure. When you have a fundraiser, you, depending upon what you're doing, I mean, if you're having a fundraiser where you're selling an item, you have to pay for the cost of the item. So that would be the expenses related to that. Or if you're having a fundraiser and you need to make copies to spread the word about it, or you need to have supplies to set up wherever the fundraiser is going to be, those would be the expenses related to the fundraiser.
I think what they may have been
So it's
trying
money-
to say was, oh, I'm sorry,
Go
is
ahead.
No, that's
why
okay.
can't
Go
you
ahead.
just why can't you just net the amount? And I think the
What's in
transparency needs to be there for both the income and the expense.
Right.
Exactly. Yes, you need to show all money going out and all money coming in. It may be a net expense or a net income, but like Dina said, you want to show all of these transactions, right? And Patty, can you talk a little bit more and clarify about the 3-to-1 rule, as we call it, the programs versus fundraisers?
Sure. I mean, this is a guide. It is a long-standing PTA guide, both at the national and the state level, and we do have that also kind of documented or detailed out in the resource guide. You can find it there I don't know the number of the section, but I think it's called programs. But really what we're just trying to do is, again, remind people in the community that we are not a fundraising organization. Our mission is not to raise money to do things to reach our mission. Our mission is advocacy based. So we're supposed to be advocates to help make our mission happen. And the way we do that, again, is by reaching out to legislators and our school district, making sure that everything's in place for our children to achieve everything that we feel that they can achieve. So we want to make sure that, again, to meet our mission, that we are showing we're an advocacy association. And a lot of our advocacy takes place through family engagement. So again, family engagement is all about programs, doing events, and having our families and staff, people in the community all come together to do what's best for our children. So we really want to make sure that we're limiting the idea that everything that PTA is about raising money, because that's really not what we're about. So that's why that's where that balance came up. So again, we could, and we have had PTAs prove that we could raise a lot of money. We can reach out to the community, and there are a lot of people that respect the brand of PTA, and they hear, oh, PTA is doing this, I will give money towards it. And we've had PTAs that can raise significant amount of money, but that's not really meeting the mission. Even if they spend the money, on, what winds up happening is they spend the money on things to improve the school building, which is again against our mission. So our fundraising really should just be enough to cover what we want to do as a PTA as far as programs and engaging families and helping our students. And so that's kind of why we came up with that ratio. As a PTA, again, precedes my time in PTA as well. It's always been around.
A question regarding what if the unit did not have the audit last year? How do they handle that now?
Your bylaws document who your committee should be to do the audit. And I would work with the executive committee to appoint those people as soon as possible and get it going.
So
you can hire
audit the previous year. That's what you're saying, right?
Right. And you can hire a professional to do it as long as your membership approves the expense for it. If you feel, for both that and your taxes, if you feel like the taxes are more than you want to do, if you're into the EZ where your income is over 50,000, and that's another reason why we want you to document your income as pure income rather than netting out your expenses, is because that is your threshold for what tax form you have to which 990 you have to use. So again, if you're under 50,000, you just have to send in the 990 postcard. If your income goes over 50,000, then you're into the EZ and you have to, really document the work that you did and why you needed $50,000, et cetera, et cetera. But
maybe the question that came through asking what is a lower limit, is that what they intended? I'm not clear.
I think that was the credit card. The credit card lower limit that I was suggesting is $500 or less. But again,
$500.
Yeah, but again, assess your unit. Like if your unit does, a family engagement event every month, and you spend $1,000 on refreshments, and then think about that for your credit card limit. Use your judgment on that.
One event, how much you need to spend, right? That's how you're gearing it.
Yeah, based on what is your culture of your PTA? And again, if you want to discuss that on a one-to-one basis, you can reach out to me. You can show me we can look at your budget and figure out, what we would recommend for the credit card.
The next thing is they'd like a link of where the language is or the template for donating items to the school district. Is that something we could just link to in the chat, or is that something we're going to post?
So right now it's part of the insurance section of the resource guide. So I did put the link there. I'm going to go back a page. No, wait a minute. I went back too many pages. Shoot. So the resource guide here, I did not put the link. Sorry. The resource guide is on the New York State PTA website. You can just, search resource guide, and you want to look for section 5B insurance. The sample letter is in there, but no, we don't have it as a template right now. But I just wrote that down as notes.
As a template to link to, right? And one last question. You talked about again, great advice. We've run into this situation where a family member or someone on the board or a chair of a committee runs a business, and making sure that you have estimates from other companies and that you've compared them and that in fact it was the best deal. So a question related to that came in. What if a relative works for a company that you are using for your fundraiser?
if it's a relative, I mean, I guess it would be like, you would probably need to define the relative, like if it's a spouse, you know, again, I would do the quotes, seek out quotes. I mean, but if it's, you know, a cousin twice removed or whatever, use your judgment. Use your judgment. I mean, some of our smaller communities, obviously people, I mean, there was, you know, the options, you know, there's somebody works, you know, somebody who works there.
And assuring that the fundraiser was not selected based on that. If they happen
Right.
to work there, they happen to work there. That was not the reason they were selected, and that other fundraisers were considered. And we're going to conclude with one last question. It's a very common question. What is the minimum base amount the PTA needs to have in their bank account? How much is too much? How little is too little?
So your budget, when you create your budget, should be balanced, right? So again, these are the expenses of what we want to do this year. All the events that we want to have, all the activities, we have to pay for our PTA insurance. We want to, you know, have, you know, monthly coffee with the principal, and it's going to cost us this much. All of our expenses, and then we have our income that's going to support that. That budget should be balanced all the time. So for instance, if you just had your Briggs Fall fundraiser and it was $10,000 more than you planned, you took in net $10,000 more, you need to either, you can lower some other income lines to make up for that, or, you know, go back and look and say, well, wait a minute, maybe now we can send more people to New York State Convention and we can increase that line. So that's number one, you should always be balanced. So I recommend as carryover from one year to the next, or at any one time, 50% or less of your expenses. We
Thanks
are
for
again,
answering that. Thank you.
yeah, we are again year to year, and what people contribute to your PTA this year, they're contributing it for you to expend this year, and we really should make every effort to do that. We are really not in the business of accruing funds.
And only a healthy reserve that carries you through the first couple of months is
Exactly, which should be 50% or less of your expenses.
These were all awesome questions. I want to thank Patty Frazier, New York State PTA Treasurer, and Dana Walsh, our Administrator, who answers all the calls that come in regarding insurance and membership and all these very complicated matters of PTA. We thank you both so much for your thorough and generous sharing of information this evening. Please, we thank everybody who logged in onto this Zoom webinar, and please join us December 1st for the next upcoming leadership webinar. And the topic is another hot topic in PTA and in our schools: diversity, equity, and inclusion. How we can do this very important work in our units, and what does it mean to our PTAs to do this work? How do we go about it? If you're already doing diversity, equity, and inclusion, how to move from there, how to grow. And we will again hear from some of the specialists and coordinators at New York State PTA who will share their expertise with you, and welcome you to send us questions in advance, and you'll see registrations going out the week prior to the webinar. Thank you so much, everybody. We love you joining us on these evenings so we can learn from each other. Thank you.
Thank
Patty
you
and
so
Dana.
much. And I really do appreciate everybody joining in tonight. It was a great event, a great discussion at the end there too. Thanks.
It's wonderful. Thank you, Dana. Thank
Good
you,
night,
everybody.
everyone.
And we were joined by Dana Playton, our New York State PTA president, who moved over to this webinar from our bylaws town hall, preparing for our bylaws that will be out for vote at our upcoming convention in Syracuse. Please, if you haven't registered for convention, as Patty mentioned, please be sure to, at this point, register for the virtual attendance of convention. It will be available as a Zoom link. You can go to New York State PTA website under events and register right there to attend from your the comfort of your home, and be able to see the resolutions that are up for renewal. We have 2 brand new resolutions, as well as our bylaws that are up for again, some changes and the elections of our new officers. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.